RMIT would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations as the traditional owners of the land on which the university stands.
We respectfully recognise elders past and present. Welcome to Newsline, live from the RMIT studios.
Hello and welcome to Newsline. I'm Alex Cameron.
And I'm Lily Beamish. Today on the programme, Anthony Albanese has landed in hot water after sarcastically asking the Shadow Treasurer if he has Tourette's.
And in international news, Israel and Lebanon have traded rockets overnight, with dozens killed in the fighting. Later in the programme, we'll have updates across sport and weather, but first, today's news.
Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has apologised for ableist comments during question time yesterday after asking Shadow Treasurer Angus Taylor if he had Tourette's in response to frequent interruptions. The Coalition and the Greens have labelled the Prime Minister's comments as ableist and insensitive. The Prime Minister has apologised twice, saying his comments were unkind and hurtful.
Overseas now, and fighting is intensified in the Middle East, with Israel launching airstrikes on Lebanon and Syria, and Hezbollah firing 170 rockets at Israel, according to the Israeli Defense Force. Israel also attacked Syria overnight, with the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights reporting 9 Syrians were killed, including a child. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says that Israeli forces have killed the would-be successors of former Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah.
Emotional scenes of loved ones reconnecting with their families unfolded at Australian airports overnight as 3 more repatriation flights landed from Lebanon. As Israeli strikes in South Beirut continue to cause massive destruction, more than 1,200 Australians, permanent residents and their immediate family members have been evacuated from Lebanon. Over 4,000 people have registered to leave Lebanon, but as the region grows increasingly unstable, the Australian government is warning future flights from Lebanon are not certain.
To supermarkets now, and Coles and Woolworths have dropped the price of milk to its lowest point since 2011, with dairy farmers fearing a price war that could threaten to impact already razor-thin margins. The news comes as major supermarkets face legal action from the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission over allegations that they misled customers with false discounts. Coles denies it's paying farmers less, but Dairy Farmers Victoria has regardless called milk price drops soul-destroying.
The US state of Florida is bracing for a Category 5 hurricane to hit Tampa Bay on Wednesday night local time. The state has ordered over 1 million residents to evacuate the Tampa region as the second hurricane in 2 weeks approaches. US President Joe Biden has warned Hurricane Milton could be the worst storm in 100 years to hit Florida. Joining us later on the program, our reporter Seina Katayama will tell us more.
The University of Melbourne has notched its lowest ever position in global university standings, falling from 37th to 39th in the Times Higher Education rankings. Australian universities fell across the board in rankings released today, with 17 major universities around the country receiving a lower rank than last year. Times Higher Education spokesperson Phil Batty said the rankings show serious warning signs that Australia's international reputation as a provider of tertiary education is slipping.
Airlines that strategically cancel flights to block competition at Sydney Airport could face civil penalties thanks to the Albanese government's crackdown on the Qantas Virgin duopoly. New legislation in the aviation sector would penalise slot hoarding, forcing aviation companies to use their slots or risk losing them.
More than 120 academics from youth and mental health organisations have signed an open letter to the Prime Minister arguing against a social media ban for children and teenagers. Opposition to the ban is growing, with ACT Chief Minister Andrew Barr saying it doesn't make sense to remove existing teenage users from social media platforms. Victorian Premier Jacinta Allen has launched a consultation into the proposed ban, saying that in her view there is a consensus among parents and young people that 14 is the right age to limit access to social media. And that's all for today's headlines.
In a bid to tackle the housing crisis, the government aims to build thousands of new social housing dwellings by redeveloping Melbourne's high-rise estates. But how will this affect the communities in them? James Beale reports.
In November 2020, the government announced the Big Housing Build initiative. Its aim was to build 12,000 new social and affordable homes across Victoria. 4 years later, there are still worries that haven't been eased.
The older generation might feel like they've been here for a long time and they've built a community around here, and for them to be scattered because you don't know where they're going to be relocated to, it might cause a friction in the community.
These frictions can become fears, and whilst the scheme pledged $5.3 billion to fund the project, less than half of the proposed total of houses have been completed so far. The social housing waitlist has grown to over 51,000 people. Now, the Victorian government has pledged to invest in new housing developments and redevelop existing high-rise estates, but the progress remains slow, and key indicators show that many are still at risk of homelessness. The 44 high-rise estates around Melbourne are scheduled to be redeveloped, providing more modern social housing, but transparency of planning and communication has been an issue.
If they are going to be guaranteed to be relocated to somewhere better, more spacious or whatever, then I think it's a good thing, because it is important that we move in with modern times and, innovative homes and stuff like that.
Many residents are still looking for confirmation on where they will live after the redevelopment of their high-rises begin. It raises the question as to why there is not more clarity regarding outcomes of the initiative.
I just wonder if they ever really thought about what it means and why it's a good thing, and maybe it is a good thing. I worked with public housing tenants who live in towers, and some of them really don't like them. So I'm not saying we need to keep them all, but just announce without talking to community, without finding out what they want. They may have different views and different preferences. So yeah. I really don't know, and I don't think anyone knows, and we need to talk to them and to ask them what they want.
James Beale, Newsline.
And James will be joining us later in the program to discuss the federal budget.
It's been a year since Hamas committed its October 7 attacks on Israel, killing 1,200 and injuring countless more, as well as taking 251 hostages. Since then, the Gaza Health Ministry says Israel has killed more than 40,000 Palestinians, many of them children, in an act of aggression that could constitute war crimes, according to the UN. Thousands flocked to demonstrations in Melbourne on Sunday to mark a year of war and once again call for a ceasefire. Alex Cameron reports.
Every Sunday for the past year, Melburnians have gathered in the CBD to protest against Israel's war in Gaza. Numbers at the protest had been waning, but Israel's recent invasion of Lebanon seems to have reignited demonstrators, with thousands bringing the city to a standstill on Sunday afternoon.
Probably the only one I could compare it to is like an invasion day in terms of size and presence, but yeah, huge numbers. It's really good to see.
There was once again a heavy police presence, just weeks after controversial clashes between police and protesters outside the Land Forces Weapons Expo. Independent Senator Lydia Thorpe and Greens member Gabrielle de Vietri were among the speakers, with Thorpe highlighting solidarity between the struggles of Palestinians and First Nations peoples.
And our continued protests for the last 200 years against this colonial oppressive regime that is also complicit in the genocide in Palestine.
Thousands of paper flags covered with messages and signs bearing the names of countless children killed by Israeli bombing brought a somber note to the demonstration, an inescapable reminder of the devastating human cost of war.
The UN's ruled it as a plausible genocide, and many Holocaust survivors have also called it out as a genocide. And I think, that's what unites all these people, is the common love for humanity.
No justice, no peace.
Organisers say that the crowd numbered in the tens of thousands, with a rally in Sydney also drawing large numbers despite earlier attempts by New South Wales Police to have the demonstration prohibited. Melburnians have once again proven that they're willing to turn out in numbers, whatever the weather. It's hard to see how anything short of a ceasefire will mark an end to these weekly demonstrations. Alex Cameron, Newsline.
We're heading to a short break now. We'll be back with a live cross from reporter James Beale and a look at the federal budget.
And to look at the international news with reporter Seina Karayama.
Welcome back to Newsline. I'm Alex Cameron.
And I'm Lily Beamish.
A high school in Parkville will have to relocate their students to a new location in the city as their campus has become overcrowded. University High School will make the temporary switch to an office building on Lonsdale Street in the CBD in the first term of 2025. Reporting live at the site is reporter James Beale. James, what can you tell us about the situation surrounding University High's move to a new campus?
Yeah, thanks, Alex. So, Victoria Education Minister Ben Carroll announced that 400 Year 9 students from University High will be moved to this rented office building at 399 Lonsdale Street due to overcrowding at their main campus. The Victorian government has invested $1.3 million to support the relocation and improve facilities at the building. Now, the new site for the school is around 2 kilometres away from the main campus, which is about a 30-minute walk. This building is currently the site of the Institute of Health and Nursing Australia's Melbourne CBD campus. So there's already a lot happening around here. But the school has agreed upon a 7-year lease, which has been described as short-term by the Education Minister. It's not the first time that this school has had to relocate some of their students. They have previously operated a temporary campus at North Melbourne and a North Melbourne primary school, with their tenancy there supposed to end at the end of this year.
So that's a big disruption for that Year 9 cohort. How will this transition to a new campus affect the learning outcomes for those students?
Yeah, it's a great question, Alex. So University High's principal, Keir Foster, he's let parents know that the campus will continue to ensure that their students and their children get a quality education in the safe environment in the CBD. There are plans to redevelop the Year 9's curriculum to better suit the location. However, this is undoubtedly going to cause disruption for the children, the parents and the teachers involved as well. In regards to the building's physical preparation, the Victorian Schools Building Authority said that the building would be adapted to suit the new students' environment, and it would include general purpose classrooms as well as multi-purpose practical learning areas.
And James, for a move like this, does it seem like there has been much opposition to the relocation?
Yeah, Lily, so the opposition's education spokesperson, Jess Wilson, has come out and criticised the 7-year lease as inadequate. She argues that it is not a short-term lease whatsoever. I'm sure that there are parents out there as well who are going to struggle with finding the time to change their morning routines. You know, as we said, it's a 30-minute walk from the main campus. That can make a big difference for parents getting to work in the morning, getting their children in, as well as the CBD being much busier than most areas of the city. So there's added traffic upon that.
You mentioned that the opposition's education spokesperson criticised the government's preparation. What other plans could help with the school's relocation?
Alex, it's a great question. At the moment, we're seeing Queensland, Victoria, New South Wales and South Australia are all advocating for a 5% increase in federal funding for public schools. The Education Minister, Jason Clare, proposed a 2.5% increase, in July that would raise the federal contribution to 22.5%. Now, this funding would help to provide the financial support for the school to expand their current capacity by developing new teaching spaces on the campus.
And across both the state and nationwide, is there a serious issue with funding for schools like this?
I believe so, Lily. It's interesting because there's data out there that shows that 98% of public schools are currently underfunded. Whereas we look at the private schooling system and it's the opposite. Most have been overfunded. There was a study conducted by economist Jim Stanford that touched on this. He found that fully funding public schools to the schooling resource standard would provide substantial long-term economic benefits. There's projected fiscal gain of around $3 to $7.5 billion annually after 20 years due to increased productivity and reduced social support costs.
Thanks so much for your time, James. We now turn our attention to international news with Seina Kariyama.
Thanks, Lily. First in international news, the fight between the Israeli military and Hezbollah's intensifying as Israel's military said it deployed a 4th Army Division into South Lebanon, expanding its ground offensive yesterday. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Israeli airstrikes have killed the 2 potential successors of Hezbollah. Hezbollah has not confirmed this. The Lebanese Health Ministry said that 36 people have been killed in Israel attacks on Monday alone. At least 1,400 Lebanese people, including civilians, medics, and Hezbollah fighters, have been killed since the escalation 3 weeks ago. Next, an update on the ASEAN summit held in Laos until the 11th of October. Anthony Albanese will talk with Chinese Premier Li Qiang to lift bans on Australian lobster sales. This trip will also be Anthony Albanese's first chance to meet Japan's new Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba. American delegate Anthony Blinken will also be talking at the summit about the human rights in Myanmar and China's movements in the South China Sea. Social media platform X, formerly known as Twitter, was reinstated in Brazil after complying with Supreme Court demands. X, formerly known as Twitter, owned by billionaire Elon Musk, who denounced the orders as censorship, was banned in late August after not complying with Supreme Court orders related to hate speech moderation. To the U.S., Hurricane Milton, heading for Florida, has strengthened into a Category 5 storm. President Biden says the hurricane could be the worst one in over 100 years. This comes as communities in the southeast U.S. are still recovering from the devastation caused by Hurricane Helene almost 2 weeks ago. While North Carolina was one of the hardest hit states, parts of Florida, where Milton is headed, was also hit by the Category 4 hurricane.
So, Sana, how are the state governments dealing with these natural disasters one after another? And are they getting enough support from the White House?
Lily, yeah, it's a tough situation. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is not taking calls from Vice President Kamala Harris about storm recovery from Hurricane Helene. He told NBC News that he was not taking the Democratic presidential nominees' calls because they seemed political.
So we've heard that this is the third fastest intensifying storm on record in the Atlantic. What are experts saying about the storm, and when is Hurricane Milton expected to reach land?
Within a day, Hurricane Milton went from a tropical storm to a Category 5 hurricane, which is the highest rating. Climate experts are saying that global heating is likely making storms stronger as hotter air and water provides more energy to a storm. Hurricane Milton is expected to make a landfall in Florida tomorrow.
Thank you for your time, Sana. That's the international news for today. We'll be back after the break with news on e-scooters and academic boycotts.
Welcome back to Newsline. I'm Alex Cameron.
And I'm Lily Beamish.
The 2.5-year trial of shared e-scooters has come to an early end. The City of Melbourne passed a motion ending the contract with Lime and Neuron 6 months early. The scooters are now banned from the CBD. William Stanley reports.
moved a motion to ban hired e-scooters from the CBD. Since their introduction, there have been over 10 million trips recorded throughout the CBD and surrounding suburbs. Their apparent popularity was not enough reason to keep the scooters around.
You know, e-scooters work really well in so many different cities. I don't know why it's such a big problem in Melbourne.
The hired scooters run by companies Lime and Neuron were introduced through a trial back in 2022. Lord Mayor Nicholas Reece has been a strong advocate for their removal, stating that they presented a serious risk and were shameful. The scooters are an emerging technology that has created confusion when it comes to regulating their use.
What we're seeing is really a whole bunch of e-scooters are presenting to emergency department, but that does not equate to them being the shared e-scooters. There's no regulatory framework for private e-scooter use other than to say that you need to ride them on the road.
The contracts with Lime and Neuron were not set to expire for another 6 months, leaving the operators disappointed in the ruling. Melbourne now joins other cities, Rome, Paris, Montreal and Toronto, to ban the shared scooters. Introduced as a new eco-friendly mode of transport, local residents express mixed feelings at the removal.
Yes, dangerous, especially for the elderly people that want to come outside and enjoy.
I live in Richmond, so they're just handy.
I think getting it off is not a great idea. Something else could have been done, like restricting the speed on those vehicles, that how they run.
The decision to stop the shared e-scooter program has been met with some criticism. Most notably, the Victorian Premier Jacinta Allen, who has urged the council to reconsider the ban. With no plan to replace the rental scooters, Lord Mayor Nicholas Reece is standing firm on his decision to keep the scooters off the city streets. The ban that took effect on the 24th of September will only apply to shared scooters, allowing private scooter owners to still operate in the CBD. William Stanley, Newsline.
The National Tertiary Education Union has passed a motion supporting an institutional boycott of Israel. The decision has sparked discussions about its potential impact on academic collaborations and research within Australian universities. Local NTEU branches, including RMITs, are now considering how this motion will be implemented and what it means for staff and students.
Reporter Tom is with us. Tom, can you talk us through the specifics of the boycott?
G'day guys. Alex, there's over 100 delegates from the NTEU branches across Australia. They attended to vote, resulting in the majority vote in favour of the motion, 5 votes against and 11 abstentions. Per the Palestinian campaign for academic and cultural boycott of Israel, the motion included the following demands: refusing any form of academic and cultural cooperation with Israeli institutions, advocating a comprehensive boycott of Israeli academic institutions nationally and internationally as well, promoting divestment from Israel by international academic institutions, working towards international condemnation of Israel policies, and supporting Palestinian academic and cultural institutions directly without requiring them to partner with the Israeli counterparts.
So Tom, we understand this will affect many universities all over the country. Can you explain what the motion actually means on a practical level for Australian universities and their connections with Israeli institutions?
Absolutely, Lily. So this motion calls essentially for all Australian universities to review their academic ties with Israeli institutions, particularly those connected to the Israeli weapons and the military industry. It also urges universities to audit these relationships and cut any links, while providing scholarships for Palestinian students and supporting higher education in the Gaza territory. The implications could be significant for international partnerships and collaborations, especially in areas like research and technology in Australia.
Yeah. So Tom, how has the motion been received from within the academic community?
Look, it's been mixed opinions there, Alex. The motion has sparked widespread discussion. There's certainly some NTU members and branches, like those at RMIT, which are still deliberating right now as we speak. To implement the motion, others have voiced concerns about academic freedom and the potential for this to strain international relationships. So there's a clear divide here, and while there's strong opinions on both sides of the debate, and I think it's going to continue for a fair while yet.
Definitely. We understand, Tom, that October 7 marked 1 year since the start of Israel's war in Gaza after a deadly attack by Palestinian Hamas militants. So what was the significance of the motion coming just before the nationwide protests on this date?
That's right, Lily. Well, the timing was very significant as the motion comes just before nationwide protests, and it in fact marked 1 year of violence against Palestinians. So it definitely marked a very important date. It shows the NTEU's alignment with broader movements advocating for Palestinian rights, and it strengthens their commitment to these causes at both a national and, of course, at an institutional level within the universities.
So the NTEU is planning a National Day of Action for Palestine. Do you know if there's been any other actions that the union has proposed in relation to this issue, Tom?
It's a good question, Alex. Look, in addition to the academic boycott, the NTEU is planning a National Day of Action for Palestine, and that will be done on October 23rd, and has called for Australian universities to withdraw from the 2013 Memorandum of Understanding with Israel on higher education cooperation. They've also issued a public statement condemning the ongoing violence in Gaza and what they're calling the scholasticide, the destruction of educational infrastructure in Palestinian territories. So it's a very important issue, guys, and I think we're going to be talking about it for many weeks to come.
Tom Ingleton there from RMIT. For over a year now, crowds have been gathering every Sunday out the front of the State Library of Victoria, calling for an end to the Israel-Hamas war. While the weekly Free Palestine rallies have been a visible presence in the CBD, people have been gathering and finding other ways to creatively protest against the humanitarian crisis in Palestine. Mel Bakewell reports.
You might imagine protest to look a certain way. Speeches, chanting, and people marching at a rally. But for some, there are other ways to demonstrate. At a community workshop held over the weekend, an initiative called Flood the Post invited people to create hand-drawn postcards to send to their local representatives.
A lot of folk who participated were writing to the politicians for the first time and stating their demands.
Their last event, held earlier this year, produced almost 11,000 postcards. With growing concern from civil rights groups about the right to protest being curtailed by anti-protest laws across Australia, art has an impactful role to play.
In a mass movement, there needs to be a variety of actions because the story can't just be angry people yelling at each other. I personally believe that art and creativity is a great way to do that.
In March this year, Lucas Lee put a call out for people to help fold 12,000 paper kites.
The official death toll of children right now is sitting at 16,500. When we first started this project, it was 12,000, and it has just climbed and climbed.
According to a recent analysis by Oxfam, more women and children have been killed by the Israeli military in the last year than in the equivalent period of any other conflict in the last 20 years.
We have brought in people who would not come to protest normally. We have brought mothers, we have brought families, we've shared meals while we made kites. This is a long struggle, and we need to look after each other as well.
Whether it's the amount of people in the streets, the number of kites folded, or the number of hand-drawn postcards arriving in the mail, organisers are hoping that their messages of ceasefire and lasting peace in the region hit home. Mel Bakewell reporting for RMIT, Melbourne.
That's all for now. Join us at 5 p.m. to hear about the Ubud Writers Festival and for more local news and stories. I'm Lily Beamish.
And I'm Alex Cameron. Thanks for watching. acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations as the traditional owners of the land on which the university stands.
We respectfully recognise elders past and present. Welcome to Newsline, live from the RMIT studios.
Good evening and welcome back to Newsline. I'm Alex Cameron.
And I'm Lily Beamish. A cafe in the Melbourne suburb of Kensington has been forced to shut down its takeaway window by the local council without any explanation. Matthew Unan reports.
In the heart of the leafy inner city suburb of Kensington, in Melbourne's northwest, Local Folk Cafe has been serving its customers delicious meals and thirst-quenching smoothies and coffees for years. But on the 20th of September, Melbourne City Council ordered the cafe to shut its walk-up window. The order came without warning or explanation, and the cafe owner, Ashley Benson, has been left speechless. He says he's been operating for more than 10 years and has never had any issues, so he's stunned at being forced to make the change at his business.
No, never. We've always worked well with the local councils and their laws and the public. We want to fit in. We want to do the right thing here.
The window had served as a convenient takeaway point where customers could order and pick up their drinks without having to enter the cafe.
Being a corner shop, it's an integral part of our business is to have an operating coffee window.
The window was helpful for customers with kids or prams or dogs. It also serves as a means of accessibility and inclusion for customers with wheelchairs, given the door of the entrance to the cafe is narrow and there is a step to enter the restaurant.
Having the hatch closed has been quite frustrating for myself and many other local residents. Personally, it was a really easy, quick way for me to get food and drink while I'm on the run with my pram. And unfortunately now, I've got to bring a friend or ask someone to look after the pram and maybe my daughter while I go inside. So it's quite frustrating for me.
It's actually made it impossible for me to come here by myself now, because if I've got the dog and the pram, I can't actually go inside without leaving my dog outside, which I'm not comfortable with.
Locals said they were shocked this was happening, especially after the cafe owner did so much for the community when times were tough.
A couple of years ago when the bushfires had started and our Prime Minister had left the country, he actually opened the cafe just in the morning, just from the window, for coffee and pastries.
A City of Melbourne spokesperson said they are working with the owner to find a way for the cafe to continue serving customers through the window while keeping the footpath safe and accessible for everyone. Melbourne City Council's decision to force the window shut comes after they recently installed new parking barriers in the area, reducing the already limited spots available for customers to park. And local residents say it's just another example of the council being out of touch.
People who have babies, people with dogs, people walking to work, people just find that so convenient.
Matthew Unan, RMIT Newsline.
And in breaking news, we've just had an update and the council has allowed the cafe to reopen the window today.
Well, that's good news, isn't it?
Yeah.
Words shape our worlds. That's one of the mottos of the Ubud Writers and Readers Festival, which celebrates its 20th anniversary this year. Set on the Indonesian island of Bali, the festival runs from the 23rd to the 27th of October. This year's theme is Speak the Truth, Practice Kindness.
RMIT journalism will be well represented at the festival this year, with lecturers Tito Umbio and Janak Rogers invited to moderate panels and run workshops. And joining us today is Tito Umbio. Welcome, Tito.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
So, Tito, this is the 20th edition of the Ubud Writers Festival. It's been running for a while, and it is known to involve some of the biggest names in Indonesian and international literary worlds. So, what is the Ubud Readers and Writers Festival?
Yeah, it's a really fun kind of festival in our region, because when you think about writers' festivals, often what you think of is this, like quite a kind of sterile environment where all these highly intelligent writers talk about things, and it is that. But I think at Ubud, I mean, I'm not representing Ubud, just to be clear, but I'm going to be running some of the panels. But this is going to be my second time organizing some of the panels, and it's just always fun because it's Bali, and it's a lot of the venues are open, and you see one of the panels that I have been in 2 years ago, for example, you see a bird making a nest. So everyone just kind of, there's this amazing writers talking about what they were there to talk about, but there's also this bird just making a nest. And it's just a beautiful kind of nice festival, warm, tropical, so yeah.
So Tito, this is your second time at the festival, as you mentioned, but last time you were there, you were part of a panel about media freedom in Asia. But you're doing a few different things this year, so what are they?
Yeah, so it's kind of nice to see kind of, 2 years ago I was doing some projects about media freedom. But yeah, now this year I've been doing all these research projects about ghosts and deities in Southeast Asia. So I'll be moderating a panel about gods, ghosts and deities. That's one thing. I'll be also talking about ethnography, the future of ethnography. I'll also be talking about, I'll be moderating a panel about YouTube and how YouTube is used in Indonesia by a lot of really cool activists, but also just storytellers who are using YouTube to do local stories. And that kind of comes from my interests in how people use digital technology to tell stories.
So tell us a bit more about the festival. What are some of the highlights for this year?
Oh yeah, highlights. There's a lot of really cool stuff happening. This is because this is the 20th anniversary, right? So they've got some really cool stuff. There is this trip that you can go to with Amitav Ghosh, who wrote this beautiful book called Nutmeg's Curse. I know that you've studied Indonesian as well, Alex, so you probably will be interested in this. Basically, Amitav Ghosh wrote this book about the Nutmeg's Curse, about the history of nutmegs in Indonesia and the history of colonialism. And what in this thing that he's doing, he's going to take people to do a tour of the islands where the nutmegs were. There's going to be Namli, so for Australian people, Australian viewers, he's going to be talking about his book of poetry. I think it's called 36 Ways of Writing a Vietnamese Poem. So yeah, there's a few interesting things happening. You can just go to Google it, and there's some really exciting stuff happening.
One of the main people behind the festival is Janet de Neef, who is Australian, and there's also Makassar Writers Festival, also in Indonesia, and one of the main people behind that was the late author Lily Yulaniti Farid, who passed away in 2023. Is this festival an example of a strong relationship that we have between Indonesia and Australia?
Yeah, definitely. I think Ubud Writers Festival and the Makassaris Film Festival. Yeah, thank you for mentioning that, because I think, Makassaris Writers Festival is not as big, but it's kind of more local focused. And Lily Yulianti Farid, who passed away in 2023, for example, her research was actually on the connections between Indigenous Australians and Dutch East Indies or Indonesian sailors. And that went way back, the history, the connection between them, started in, I think it's 16th century, before Australia was colonized. So there's a lot of really cool stuff that is explored by these two writers' festivals, for example, and a lot of them are about the connections between Australia and the region.
Thanks so much for your time, Tito.
Thank you.
Tito Almio from RMIT.
You might not have heard, but there's a new sport in town. Pickle Ball is the fastest growing sport in Australia, and it blends some of the most popular racket sports. And people can't get enough of it. Saina Katayama reports.
Ravi Shakar has been organizing a pickleball group in the CBD for the past year. It started with a few rackets, some hollow plastic balls, and a single court.
In short, you can say mini tennis. It's a combination of badminton and ping pong and tennis, and it's played on a small court.
But quickly the club turned into a group with over 1,700 members. Ravi, with the help from other members, organizes a pickleball session 3 times a week. At $10 a session and relative low intensity, the sport attracts players of all ages and backgrounds.
Beauty of the game is learning curve. Learning curve is very, like within a day or within a couple of hours you can learn. And all those who have never played any sport, even they can learn.
Like after the first session, I think like, oh, this is really fun and I want to continue.
The Australian Pickleball Association only started in 2020, but between 2023 and 2024, the number of Australian pickleball players doubled, with over 10,000 members across the country today.
This follows the explosion of popularity in the US, where the sport originated and had around 48.3 million players in 2023, according to the Association of Pickleball Professionals. While the sport was invented over 50 years ago, the relatively low cost of running and playing pickleball has attracted people.
As far as games go, it's pretty low barrier to entry, both rules-wise and equipment-wise.
Members say it's not just about the sport, but the community.
Becoming like a small community here, and you just like enjoy the atmosphere and the environment. It's really friendly, really warm, and you're just welcoming everyone.
As long as they keep coming, we keep organizing, irrespective of the weather and everything. People are here. It's raining now and people are still playing.
The Australian Pickleball Association says that the sport has grown 20% every year since its arrival and expects the popularity to continue. Sana Katayama, Newsline.
Coming up after the break, the latest in sport and weather.
See you then. Welcome back to Newsline. The demand for retirement living is growing, but for downsizers, there is one catch. Many aged care facilities don't allow pets. Our own Lily Beamish reports on how important pets are to some aged care residents.
At Lifestyle Meridian, pets are at the centre of the community. With dogs everywhere, there's enough pets to go around.
Hey!
Pets bring joy, purpose and activity to our lives, and as we age, their presence grows all the more important. However, not all seniors looking towards transitional homes or aged care facilities will be lucky enough to find space for their pets, with new data finding that just 18% of aged living options Australia-wide allow pets. This leaves seniors facing heartbreaking choices of what to do with their furry family members.
There's no way I'd be going anywhere without him because, he was part of the family. We looked everywhere and if they wouldn't take pets, we wouldn't come.
Well, because people don't want to be separated from their pets when they move, when they get older and move to somewhere like this.
Having pets in aged care significantly increases seniors' quality of life, with 86% of seniors reporting feeling an increase in mental and physical health, and 75% reporting an increased sense of companionship.
Well, a lot of the times when people have to surrender their pets because if they don't have other family members or friends that can take their pet, they've got to surrender them to shelters. When you do move into residential care, everyone knows you give up everything you own apart from what fits into a room. Now, having to surrender your pet, who is your best friend, and there's no doubt about it, as well, that is just ridiculously wrong.
With ongoing support from local organisations, pet-friendly aged care facilities are changing lives for the better. For many seniors, it's not just a home, it's a community. I'm Lily Beamish, reporting for RMIT Newsline.
In the city as their campuses become overcrowded. James Beal.
It's like labouring, but you go around doing gardens and stuff. Landscaping. I did it with my brother, and you'd go to a bunch of places like that, which are like these closed-off kind of communities.
Building on Lonsdale Street in the CBD in the first term of 2025. Reporting live at the site is reporter James Beal. James, what can you tell us about the situation surrounding University's High's move to a new campus?
Should I change that because I'm saying Carlton and then the Blues are the same club?
So Victoria Education Minister Ben Carroll announced that 400 Year 9 students from University High will be moved to this rented office building at 399 Lonsdale Street due to overcrowding at their main campus. The Victorian government has invested $1.3 million to support the relocation and improve facilities at the building. Now, the new site for the school is around 2 kilometres away from the main campus, which is about a 30-minute walk. This building is currently the site of the Institute of Health and Nursing Australia's Melbourne CBD campus. So there's already a lot happening around here. But the school has agreed upon a 7-year lease, which has been described as short-term by the Education Minister. It's not the first time that this school has had to relocate some of their students. They have previously operated a temporary campus at North Melbourne and a North Melbourne primary school, with their tenancy there supposed to end at the end of this year.
So it's a big disruption for that Year 9 cohort. How will this transition to a new campus affect the learning outcomes for those students?
Yeah, it's a great question, Alex. So University High's principal, Keir Foster, he's let parents know that the campus will continue to ensure that their students and their children get a quality education in the safe environment in the CBD. There are plans to redevelop the Year 9's curriculum to better suit the location. However, this is undoubtedly going to cause disruption for the children, the parents and the teachers involved as well. In regards to the building's physical preparation, the Victorian Schools Building Authority said that the building would be adapted to suit the new students' environment, and it would include general purpose classrooms as well as multi-purpose practical learning areas.
And James, for a move like this, does it seem like there has been much opposition to the relocation?
Yeah, Lily, so the opposition's education spokesperson, Jess Wilson, has come out and criticised the 7-year lease as inadequate. She argues that it is not a short-term lease whatsoever. I'm sure that there are parents out there as well who are going to struggle with finding the time to change their morning routines. As we said, it's a 30-minute walk from the main campus. That can make a big difference for parents getting to work in the morning, getting their children in, as well as the CBD being much busier than most areas of the city. So there's added traffic upon that.
You mentioned that the opposition's education spokesperson criticised the government's preparation. What other plans could help with the school's relocation?
Alex, it's a great question. At the moment, we're seeing Queensland, Victoria, New South Wales and South Australia are all advocating for a 5% increase in federal funding for public schools. The Education Minister, Jason Clare, proposed a 2.5% increase, in July that would raise the federal contribution to 22.5%. Now, this funding would help to provide the financial support for the school to expand their current capacity by developing new teaching spaces on the campus.
And across both the state and nationwide, is there a serious issue with funding for schools like this?
I believe so, Lily. It's interesting because there's data out there that shows that 98% of public schools are currently underfunded, whereas we look at the private schooling system and it's the opposite. Most have been overfunded. There was a study conducted by economist Jim Stanford that touched on this. He found that fully funding public schools to the schooling resource standard would provide substantial long-term economic benefits. There's a projected fiscal gain of around $3 to $7.5 billion annually after 20 years due to increased productivity and reduced social support costs.
The growth of social media has turned some of Melbourne's restaurants into internet sensations. And for one business, it's been a way to share their authentic family tradition to the world. Archie Bear reports.
Tucked away in a typical house in Fitzroy lies a unique part of Melbourne's food scene. Nonna's House is the brainchild of over 50 years of family history, serving authentic, homemade Italian sandwiches straight out of the backyard.
It's uncomplicated, just really nice food, and I think a lot of people want that these days, which is nice. And this unusual romantic sort of situation in the backyard is a lovely thing.
Made fresh out of the kitchen, their food has quickly become a favourite among locals, with their meatball sub regularly selling out before closing time.
Just took a big bite, and the meatballs, there's like 4 big chunks of meatballs, and they're really nice and juicy.
And it wouldn't have been possible without the help of social media, which has become the new home for restaurant marketing. Their Nonna's House Instagram page has reached more than 22,000 followers, helping attract people from all over the world.
And also found out that, their Instagram is really popular. So, I checked it out, and I finally, just made it here and then tried this nice meatball sandwich, and it's really amazing, yeah.
Nonna's House is really emblematic of a changing food culture within Australia, where restaurants must use social media to keep bringing in customers and to keep Melbourne's food scene thriving.
The widespread use of social media. Even yesterday we had some people come in from, they just got off the plane from Singapore, and they were going to go, they had to wait to get to the Airbnb. They looked it up and they came and had meatball subs and some fries and whatnot here.
At its core, Nonna's House remains a celebration of good food and family.
Enjoy that, mate. It's a tribute to all migrants that have come, or people that have come to Australia. And we have this wonderful diversity here in the backyard. And it's like home. It's wonderful. I love sharing with everybody. It's not a job, it's just a joy.
Archie Bear, RMIT Newsline.
We're heading to a short break now, but we'll be back with the weather and all the sports news from Matthew Unan.